Women of the 507th. The Story of the Brave Gulf War Women, Part 1. The courage of military women in the Gulf conflict of 2003 was put to the test only 4 days after the start of the war. On March 23, 2003, 3 female soldiers of the 507th Maintenance Company were thrust into the forefront of combat where they showed resourcefulness, integrity, and bravery under fire. These 3 female comrades in arms would meet totally different fates in the war, and this is their story. Private First Class Jessica Lynch, age 19, and Private First Class Lori Paitua, 23, were roommates and Army buddies. They first met at Fort Bliss, Texas, when they joined the 507th Maintenance Company. Specialist Shoshana Johnson, age 30, joined the Army to be a cook. The job of the 507th Maintenance Company was to repair Army vehicles and carry supplies. The unit followed the convoys of tanks and other armored vehicles traveling across the desert to Baghdad, the capital of Iraq. The 507th was not a combat unit, but the soldiers were armed with weapons so that they could fire back if fired upon. On the 4th day of the war, the 507th followed the 3rd Infantry Division as it pushed towards Baghdad. The line of tanks stretched out for miles. The soldiers faced blinding sandstorms that caused the vehicles to break down frequently. With low visibility plus sandstorms, there were no landmarks in the desert. So the small support unit followed behind the convoy as it crossed through an area that was so dangerous it would become known as Ambush Alley. Because of faulty navigation, the 507th took a wrong turn while passing through a town. As the small supply unit approached the town, it was suddenly surrounded by Iraqi soldiers who fired at the Americans. The soldiers of the 507th tried to return fire, but many of their guns were jammed with sand and dust. The lightly armed unit didn't stand a chance in hell. They had no choice but to surrender to the Iraqi soldiers. Now back home in the States, their family members watching the TV came across chilling news. Iraqi television was showing footage of 5 American prisoners of war. One of the POWs was no other than Shoshana Johnson. Johnson had been taken captive along with 4 other soldiers after the ambush of her unit. She was the first American female POW since the risk rule was lifted in 1994. You see, the 507th was a maintenance unit, and these soldiers weren't trained for battle. Johnson knew how to shoot an M16 rifle in defense, but she joined the Army to gain professional experience as a cook. Because maintenance units are not considered to be at risk or at high risk for capture, they don't receive special training in escape techniques, or they don't receive special training in how to handle interrogators during captivity. The image of a frightened Shoshana Johnson being questioned by her Iraqi captors, shown on American newscasts, created outrage and fear back in the U.S. It also brought up the debate over the proper role of women on the battlefield. There was concern for all the POWs, but the sight of a woman being held captive was very upsetting. All Americans were praying for Shoshana Johnson and the others. On March 31st, a young Iraqi lawyer named Muhammad went to pay his wife a visit at her work. She was a nurse at Saddam Hospital in Syria. As he entered the hospital, he saw members of the Fedayeen roaming the hallways. These were the most fierce and loyal of Saddam's soldiers. The lawyer discovered that they were guarding an American prisoner. The lawyer, Muhammad, asked if he could speak to the doctor of the prisoner, but he was denied. When the lawyer looked through a small window to the prisoner's room, he saw a tall Fedayeen soldier dressed in all black slap a small black woman back and forth across her face. The young Iraqi lawyer was disturbed by this and made a fateful decision to help her. Now, in order to help the American woman being held captive and abused, the lawyer Muhammad needed to contact American soldiers. Despite extreme personal danger, the Iraqi lawyer walked 6 miles through a war zone until he found a U.S. Marine checkpoint. At first, the American soldiers were very suspicious when he approached them, but Muhammad told them that an American woman was being held prisoner at the hospital. So CIA agents on the ground near Nasiriyah confirmed the lawyer's information. They were convinced that this woman was the missing soldier, Jessica Lynch. The military altered special operations to plan a rescue mission, but they needed to know exactly where she was and how many soldiers were guarding her before they went in. So this lawyer Muhammad went back to the hospital 2 more times and reported that 41 Fedayeen soldiers were guarding her. The Iraqi doctors were also going to cut her 2 legs off because they were broken, but the Iraqi lawyer was able to convince them to delay. Because that Iraqi lawyer had made so many trips to the hospital, the Iraqi soldiers became suspicious of him, and he and his wife had to be relocated to an undisclosed place near Washington, D.C. On the night of April 1st, nearly 2 weeks after the war had started, and a week after the 507th was ambushed, Special Operations Team of Marines, Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, and Air Force rescued her. They swooped over the hospital in helicopters. Lynch had suffered a broken arm, 2 broken legs, and a fractured disc in her spine. She was also very weak from surviving on orange juice and crackers. Jessica Lynch was the first POW to be successfully rescued from behind enemy lines since World War II. On that very night, 9 U.S. soldiers' bodies were discovered dead. 6 of the bodies were that of the 507th. By April 12th, 20 days after the ambush of the 507th, most Iraqi cities had fallen. So on April 16th, Shoshana Johnson and 7 of the remaining 507th were found in a small house and were sent home. God bless our soldiers and the soldiers who rescued the 507th Company. Without the help of that Iraqi lawyer named Muhammad, who put his life on the line, things may have had a much different ending. We owe our military men and women the best. Thank you for your service and for your love of our country. Well, like, subscribe, and be a genius. Think for yourself. This has been a Marologic channel.